So, if you look back at the late 1950s, you see a world that's just changing so rapidly.
Absolutely. I mean, social norms were crumbling, politics were incredibly tense.
And artists were demanding total freedom. This
Yeah,
this energy needed a soundtrack.
it did. And what came out of it was free jazz.
Yeah, and it didn't just bend the rules of music. It took the whole rule book and just set it on fire.
That's a great way to put it. It was a complete explosion. Before this, even the most, innovative jazz like bebop,
Right.
it was still trapped by structure.
hmm
The artists had to follow these fixed chord progressions, standard song lengths,
So they felt like they had these incredible things to say.
but they were trying to say them through like a tiny straw. It was just too limiting.
So today we're going to try and figure out what happens when you get rid of all those limits.
hmm
What does music even sound like when the only rule is express yourself right now?
And more importantly, why did that demand for freedom
Mm.
create a sound that, well, for a lot of people just sounded like chaos?
Chaos is a good word for how people heard it at first.
Yeah, think of it this way. Traditional jazz was like building a beautiful, complex house,
Okay.
but you had to follow a blueprint that laid out every single beam, every wall,
And the free jazz musicians just looked at that blueprint.
and said, we don't need this. They
Yeah.
started building based purely on emotion and on interaction.
So let's start with those fundamentals they threw out. I mean, pretty much every piece of music you usually hear, pop, rock, classical,
Some of it.
it's built on these strict rules for harmony and rhythm.
Right. And harmony is just how different notes sound when you play them together.
Yeah.
Rhythm is the beat you can tap your foot to.
Free jazz basically just vetoed all of
The
that.
change in the structure was just
Yeah.
immediate.
Yeah.
And it was profound.
Okay.
Think about a standard song form.
Like verse, chorus, verse, chorus.
Exactly, or the ABA form you get in old jazz standards. That structure, which was made for dancing or for lyrics,
It's gone.
totally gone. In free jazz, there's no verse or chorus.
So how is the structure created then?
It's created entirely in the moment.
Like improvised architecture.
That's it. The players start together, but where they go next depends only on how they react to the sound that just happened. They're composing the song as they perform it.
And that must immediately mess with the rhythm.
It completely changes the rhythmic foundation. If you're listening to almost any music, your foot starts tapping.
Because the drummer is keeping that steady pulse.
That constant 1, 2, 3, 4, like a metronome. In free jazz, that steady pulse, it often just disappears. The time becomes fluid.
Okay, if I'm a new listener, that sounds like the hardest thing to get used to. If the drummer isn't locking down the beat, how does the saxophone player even know where to land?
But that's the whole point. They don't.
Really?
The lack of that steady external pulse forces every musician, and you, the listener, to maintain this incredible level of tension and awareness. It takes away the comfortable ground you expect to be standing on.
And that tension is a key part of the
A
sound.
huge part. It reflects that unsettled, energetic time that we're living in.
Which brings us right to improvisation. Now, we know all jazz has improvisation, making stuff up on the spot.
Right.
But if all the rules are gone, how much more spontaneous can you really be?
The difference is the safety net, or the complete lack of one.
What do you mean?
Think of a tightrope walker. A traditional jazz improviser was walking that tightrope, but underneath them was a net.
And that was the chord progression.
Precisely. A fixed, guiding sequence of chords that told them which notes would sound good next. They had a roadmap, even if they were veering off the main path a little.
Okay, so free jazz musicians.
They throw away the map and the safety net. They're improvising with no predetermined harmony.
Nothing.
They rely purely on their ears, their technical skill, and their immediate emotional reaction to what the other players are doing.
So it's less like four individuals playing their parts.
And more like one collective, instantaneous thought.
Yeah.
And if they mess up,
There's nowhere to hide.
you've hit on the core idea. It's a musical conversation. They are listening and reacting so fast that it's often described as pure telepathy. A trumpet might play a really harsh, short phrase
And the drummer instantly reacts to that.
instantly, maybe by mimicking that texture on the snare, or the bassist might play a clashing, dissonant counter-argument. Every single performance is absolutely unique.
Because it depends entirely on that moment-to-moment synergy.
Right. Which brings up that skill question again. If there's no sheet music, no guiding chords, the level of skill required has to be just astronomical.
You have to be a master of your instrument.
You have to be a musical genius, frankly. It's one thing to sound good when the harmony is predictable. It's another thing entirely to conjure compelling, organized sound from total freedom.
Okay, so let's talk about that sound because it's often what shocks new listeners. We said harmony is when notes sound pretty together.
Right, in typical music.
So what happens when free jazz musicians deliberately look for notes that are not supposed to go together?
You get dissonance.
That clashing sound.
Yeah. Think of a standard musical scale. It's like a paint palette with only 7 approved colors that you know will match well.
Okay.
Free jazz musicians use the whole spectrum, and they sometimes deliberately pick 2 colors that clash, really harshly,
And why? What's the point of the clash?
to create conflict, intensity, or a feeling of deep, raw emotion. They aren't trying to make background music for a dinner party.
They're trying to express something about the human experience.
Exactly. So if they're avoiding that approved palette, how do they keep it from just becoming random noise?
That's the question.
It's that conversation again.
Yeah.
The clash isn't random, it's directed. They use that density and complexity to create different textures.
Like rough sandpaper instead of smooth velvet.
Perfect analogy. The dissonance is a tool to show excitement or tension or even anger. It's always intentional.
And the rhythm, which we touched on, gets even weirder when you add that dissonance. The metronome is gone, but how does the time actually move?
It moves collectively, and it's multi-directional.
What does that mean?
Imagine 4 people walking around a room, but each person is subtly changing their speed and direction based on what the person next to them just did.
Okay, I can picture that.
The patterns the drummer plays, for instance, are fast and unpredictable. They'll often avoid hitting the cymbals or drums in a way that gives you a clear downbeat.
So you really can't tap your foot to it.
You can try,
Yeah.
but if you, as the listener, are looking for that external pulse, you'll just get lost. It's constantly shifting.
It's why the music can feel almost weightless or like it's floating.
Exactly. It's not tied down to earth by that steady beat.
Yep.
You have to find an internal pulse and follow the emotional direction of the music, not the physical one.
And this is where it gets really physical. They use the same instruments everyone knows,
Saxophone, trumpet, double bass, drums.
but they pushed them in ways that were, well, frankly abusive. They were loud. They forced new sounds out of them.
Absolutely. The instrument itself became part of the exploration. Instead of focusing on beautiful, clean tones, a saxophone player,
Like Ornette Coleman.
like Ornette Coleman or Albert Ayler, yeah, they might produce sounds that critics described as screaming or squeaking or growling.
They're making their horns sound like a voice.
An abstract voice, yeah. Expressing feelings that a clean, pretty melody just couldn't capture. They were demanding that the instrument physically give them a new texture.
And the other instruments.
Same thing. Trumpeters would blow extremely hard or use weird combinations of mutes to get a raw, abrasive texture. The double bass.
Which usually just walks a bass line, pluck, pluck, pluck.
Right. In free jazz, it's often played with a bow, creating these long, eerie, sustained notes, sometimes incredibly high-pitched.
And the drummers, they stop keeping time.
And they start creating soundscapes. A wash of sound.
A wash of sound, I like that.
Instead of a simple beat, the drummer uses the entire kit cymbals, rims, toms, to create layers of rhythm and noise that interact with everyone else. The texture can go from a soft whisper to just this overwhelming, intense wall of sound.
So who are these musicians? Who are the brave ones who looked at this and said, I'm going to do this, knowing almost everyone is going to hate it?
Well, the foundational figure, without a doubt, was Ornette Coleman.
Right.
His album from 1960 was literally titled Free Jazz.
He gave the genre its name.
He gave it its name, and he solidified its core idea. This is about collective freedom. He was the one who insisted on throwing out all the chord progression rules.
And you can't talk about this period without mentioning John Coltrane.
No way. He was always a huge star in the jazz world.
Right. But he moved into this more experimental style later in his career.
He did. He used it as a way to make these incredibly spiritual and intense musical statements.
And there was Cecil Taylor on piano.
Oh, Cecil Taylor. He treated the piano less like a melodic instrument and more like a huge drum kit.
100 drums you play with your finger.
Exactly. He played with unbelievable speed and percussive energy, creating these dense, swirling clusters of notes that sound like nothing else. Those 3 really helped shape the language.
Let's talk about the opposition they faced, because it was brutal. Critics and traditional jazz fans, they hated it. Why so much hate?
They hated it because it seemed to deny the fundamental value they saw in music, which was order.
The blueprint.
The blueprint. To the traditionalists, the lack of melody, the lack of familiar harmony, the fluid rhythm, It just meant the music was unskilled and messy. They didn't hear the complexity of the interaction.
They just heard noise.
They just heard noise.
Mm.
I mean, Ornette Coleman struggled just to get booked in clubs in New York. This wasn't just a critical disagreement. It was a financial hardship.
Wow. So clubs just refused to book them.
Many of them, yeah, especially in the early 60s. The audience didn't get it. You couldn't dance to it. It wasn't easy listening.
So they had to find their own places to play.
They did. They organized their own concerts in lofts, small art spaces. They faced real opposition and often struggled just to survive because they were so committed to this art they felt was honest and true.
That takes so much guts to stand by your vision when people are telling you your art is trash and they won't pay for it.
It does.
Uh-huh.
But because of that commitment, the legacy of free jazz is just undeniable. It completely changed the musical world.
It basically taught musicians in every other genre that the boundaries they thought were there.
Were voluntary.
It was a license to explore.
Yes.
Hmm.
For example, rock musicians, especially in the progressive and psychedelic bands, they took the idea of longer, free-form solos and wove them into their music.
And that intensity, that loud, dissonant sound.
You can hear its influence in genres like heavy metal, which uses that exact sound to get emotional weight.
And it even spilled out of popular music, right, into classical.
Absolutely. Modern classical composers suddenly realized they could use instruments in non-traditional ways, making a violin squeak or a trombone growl, and it could be considered a valid composition.
It also fed into early electronic music.
Directly. Those improvisational techniques, reacting instantly to a shifting soundscape. That's now common practice for electronic artists manipulating sound in real time. The idea that you could just break down all the barriers and just create sound, that's maybe its greatest legacy.
It showed the world that music doesn't have to follow the old rules to be powerful.
And you can still hear echoes of it today in experimental film scores, in any genre that prioritizes emotional texture over a standard pop song.
So for you listening, if you want to approach this music, because it is not easy listening, you have to come to it with an open mind.
And patience. This isn't background music for when you're doing your homework.
Right.
It requires focused effort. My best advice is to stop trying to find the beat.
Or the melody.
Or the melody. Instead, think of it less like a song and more like watching a really intense, dramatic conversation unfold. Imagine the instruments are characters talking in abstract sound, not words. Just focus on how they're reacting to each other.
A great way to start is to listen to a whole album, or at least one long track all the way through. You need to understand the journey they're taking you on.
And don't worry if it sounds jarring or harsh at first. That's intentional. The goal is to feel the tension, not the relaxation.
But today, free jazz is totally recognized as a vital, necessary part of music history.
Oh, absolutely. It's studied in universities. The same kind of people who once called it just noise now recognize the immense skill and creativity it requires.
I think the ultimate takeaway is that free jazz is this powerful reminder that art doesn't have to be comfortable to be true. It's always challenging our ideas of what music can and should be.
It really is a pure expression of freedom through sound.
Go find an Ornette Coleman track and listen to something truly original. Good luck with your studies.